They told him he was broken. They told her she was wrong. But when their hearts stopped and everything went silent, they crossed a veil. And behind it, there wasn't judgment. There was warmth. There was peace. There was something so vast and tender, it made every shame ever spoken feel like a lie. What if the afterlife doesn't condemn them? What if it embraces them exactly as they are? Here, on this side of the veil, love isn't always welcome. Churches, temples, mosques, they taught that who you love could cast a shadow on your soul, that two men holding hands was rebellion, that two women sharing a life was confusion. Christianity pointed to Leviticus, Islam to Hadith, others to custom, culture, and control. But here's what they rarely admit. These scriptures were written thousands of years ago in societies that feared difference, where survival meant uniformity. They weren't written to reflect eternity. They were written to protect society from change. Over time, these words became walls, and those walls turned into shame. But the soul was never broken. The soul didn't ask for permission to love. Many LGBTQ+ people grew up believing they were sinners, not because they harmed anyone, but because someone told them their existence was offensive. Some believed it until their hearts stopped beating, and in that silence, beyond doctrine, beyond dogma, they met a presence, not one that judged, one that loved. And suddenly, every verse ever twisted against them couldn't hold up against what they felt in that moment. They died. Some for seconds, some for minutes, but all of them crossed something, that veil between the seen and the unseen. And on the other side, they say they weren't asked what gender they were, or what pronouns they used, or who they loved. They were asked, did you live truthfully? Did you love fully? And for many, the answer came not with words, but with a flood of memory, emotion, and knowing. These are not isolated voices. They are echoes, rippling across cultures, ages, beliefs. Just a few of the many who crossed the veil and came back, changed, offering the same truth in different words. One of them is Christian Andreessen. He was gay, raised Christian. He believed he'd go to hell for loving who he loved. When he died, he met a radiant being of light who spoke with unconditional love. He asked, trembling, do I have to go back? And the light answered, yes. Your love is part of the divine plan. He returned changed, no longer hiding, no longer ashamed. Another voice, this time a woman, Carrie Kirk. She carried silence her whole life, burdened by shame, believing she wasn't worthy of love. But on the other side, after her NDE, she said, I was wrapped in love so powerful, it made every rejection I'd ever known disappear. There was no mention of sin, only a profound knowing. You are light. You are loved. And there are others whose names may be hidden, but their message is clear. One experiencer asked directly, is being gay wrong? The answer was not what they expected. The presence didn't respond with doctrine. It laughed gently, not mockingly, just amused by the question's irrelevance. Then it said, that's not a concern here. And in that moment, he understood. What we fear on earth means nothing where love is everything. These weren't visions designed to correct. They were encounters meant to awaken, because beyond biology, culture, or creed, what remains is the light of a soul. And the soul knows nothing of shame. If love is universal, why do belief systems divide it? In Christianity, certain verses became weapons. Leviticus chapter 18, Romans chapter 1. But Jesus, he never spoke against same-sex love. He embraced the excluded. He washed the feet of the rejected. And when asked what mattered most, he said, love God, love others. That is the law. In Islam, tradition holds that same-sex intimacy is haram, that is, forbidden by religious law. But the Quran speaks of compassion, mercy, and God knowing what the heart hides. Sufi poets wrote of love unbound. The friend of God wears no label. Hindu texts mention gender fluidity. Ancient India celebrated third gender identities in sacred stories. But colonial law rewrote shame, planting judgment where reverence once grew. Buddhism simply asks, Does it cause suffering? If not, it is not wrong. The journey is inward. Sexuality is not the obstacle. Across indigenous cultures, love was never boxed. Two-spirit people were seen as gifted, bridging worlds, not breaking them. The truth is, doctrine often reflects fear, not divinity. And what NDEs show is a God, a light, a source that transcends every label humanity ever carved into its pages. Beyond borders, beyond dogma, the soul finds belonging. Coming back from death isn't just biological, it's spiritual rebirth. LGBTQ+ experiencers didn't just survive, they arrived awakened. One man said, "I used to pray to be fixed. After my NDE, I knew I'd been sacred all along." A woman who had hidden for decades shared, "On the other side, there was no shame, there was just recognition. I belonged." They didn't return quoting verses. They returned with peace, clarity, and purpose. Many shed the fear that had been sown into them from childhood, not because someone told them to, but because they felt truth. That divine presence had never once flinched at their orientation. It embraced them with such intensity, it made every human rejection feel paper thin. And so they started living as healers, as artists, as creators, as teachers of love, not by preaching, but by becoming. Because once you've been touched by eternity, you no longer ask permission to be yourself. You simply are. If the afterlife doesn't shame the soul, why do we? If thousands came back, not just revived, but realigned, and every one of them spoke of love, maybe it's time we stopped listening to shame and started listening to truth. This truth, that the soul doesn't carry gender, it doesn't wear orientation, it remembers how it loved, and how it was loved in return. Everything else was just noise. The people we tried to fix were never broken. The stories we tried to silence were always songs of divine design. And the ones who hid in the dark, waiting for permission to shine, they are the lanterns now. Because when all things fall away, when books close, doctrines fade, and breath meets eternity, what remains is love. And in that love, we all belong. We are souls first. Love is our language.